Yeah, you mentioned it great there, and I was thinking about it as you were talking. Shocker, college athletics has become more professionalized in the decisions we have to make, right? And I think on both ends of the spectrum is it's a sink or swim proposition now. There is no patience anymore, right? On both ends, because this is ultimately a business, right? And there is no patience to be like, hey, man, we're just expecting you to be a guy in year three. No, you have to be a guy in year one, at least in some way, shape, or fashion. You either have to show potential or provide value.
And that's what players want too now, right? So
Yes.
that's you're seeing a lot of those guys are okay. Well, I think still like yes, money is a factor, but I still think the number one reason. By the way, this is not fact based. This is opinion based comment. I don't want anybody to like. If you have the numbers, I'd love to know them. But I still feel like probably the majority of kids transferring is playing time still, right?
Yes. Majority, definitely.
Yeah.
Like I would say 1%, maybe more than 1%, but let's just say actually in the whole transfer portal, even guys that kick down to Division two and Division three, yeah, 1% of the transfer portal in baseball, not football, in baseball is driven by money. Yes, 100%. I think even to a certain extent, and we've talked about this off air, is like I don't even think it's that big of a factor in baseball because I don't think the money's as big as people want to imagine. And I know
There's a
Baseball
couple
America
programs. Yeah.
just, yeah, I think Baseball America just wrote an article about, what guys were making. And I think in football, at least there's more structure and understanding of value. I think baseball, it's like completely off the walls insane. Like some school might offer a guy 400K, or some school might be offering 150K, right? Like it's like that's where these like crazy offers are coming from, is because there's no market value factor. I think football has generally gotten to the point where it's like we know a quarterback costs this, Jordan Seaton as a tackle costs this, right? Like, and some teams might go above that number by a decent amount. But baseball, it's just the wild, wild west. It's like, we have the money, let's throw it at this guy. We have the money, let's throw it at this guy. Because at the end of the day, the coaching staffs are making those decisions, right? We don't have general managers. We don't have analytics people to put, valuations on these guys and all of those factors that come into play. But you are correct in the fact that the majority of times people enter the transfer portal is for playing time, because a lot of them go back down, right? They're P4 guys going to mid major going to D2, and vice versa, right? So all of those factors that come into play, you are 100% accurate that players nowadays want to play. I mean, there is to a point where, a couple kids that have started college after your freshman year, if you haven't broken out, there's a large subset of players that feel like they're behind the eight ball entering their sophomore year, right?
Yep.
Like that's how accelerated this process is since we've eliminated the patience element of development and understanding what a player needs. Is if you haven't had a productive freshman season, and coaches are the same way. I mean, we've been in on coaching staffs, we've been talking to coaching staffs off the record and things like that, where if guys don't show glimpses of something as a freshman, it's like, yeah, he's never going to make it here, right? Like, and that's just the way the environment has been because of the free market movement, because of the if you want to say the NIL and bumping up, but I think it's more the free market movement that if you're not showing glimpses at 18 years old of being a productive player, more times than not, you're probably being moved to the back burner and they're excited about the next new incoming player. And again, it comes to the factor that it's more professionalized, right? At the end of the day, college baseball is more professionalized than it's ever been. And that's okay, right? In the grand scheme of things, like that's a fine factor, but it eliminates patience on both sides of the coin, where it's coaches want that productive value and it creates sink or swim, right? You mentioned the mental side of the game and what these guys in the professional ranks have to go through. Like it is legitimately make or break in these opportunities. There's no go get bigger and stronger and gain your confidence. There is no have live at bats against our Friday night guy on a Tuesday and go 2 for 2, because we're giving you those on the back burner when 100 people, or in the SEC, 1,000 people aren't watching, right? Like there are no opportunities to gain confidence behind the curtain. Now, the only way to gain confidence in the structure of college baseball is either doing it on the field against another opponent or not, right? And you could be the most talented kid in the world, but if you're not ready for that mentally, Then we end up putting ourselves in a situation where that staff's never going to trust you because you went out there and you were pitching in the SEC on a Friday in a game that was a throwaway. You were up 6 and they trusted you, and you go out there and you're spiking heaters and spiking curveballs, and you can't even get it out. Like, you think that player's ever going to gain his confidence again that he had at one point? Because in this environment, they forced that player into that scenario. Whereas in prior years, kid would have never sniffed them out. It would have been like, hey, you are going to spend the whole season with our strength conditioning staff. We're going to get you live reps when we need to. You're going to practice every day, obviously, but your main focus is going to be, we're going to take your 180-pound body and you're going to be 205 pounds by the next spring, and you're going to be a stud. That's what it used to be, right? When we had unlimited 40 roster spots and, red shirts that were actually real and developmental tracks. Like, that used to be a legitimate thing where it's like, your main focus is to add mass, and we just want you to get jacked in this year. And that doesn't
Yeah,
happen anymore because it can't.
I think it's raised to two things for coaching staff that you have to be, much better at, right? And I think one of those things is, which one should I say first? I think the most important thing is transparency with the guys on your roster, right? From the recruiting process, and a lot of coaches we've talked to have talked about how they are now checking in with their players a lot more often, right? In a one-on-one setting, they are having way more conversations so that those guys know exactly where they stand. It is so important now because any kind of confusion from player to coach and like lack of communication or breakdown in that communication chain, and it can cause, the angst, which can lead to guys walking out of the program. And you might be like, well, we really liked this guy. We thought he was going to have a chance, even, because there might be guys still, obviously only, a limited number of guys can still get on the field. So there are still situations where you have a guy that you think in a year or two, or it's less at 2, it's more like in the next year, he's going to be on the field for you every day. If you're not communicating that with him and he doesn't understand exactly where he's at, and that's always been important, but I just think it's way more imperative now, because now what is the people in his corner going to say? What is he going to see all his peers doing? They're hitting in the portal. And if you might have a freshman who you think is going to be really important to you as a sophomore who can develop into that. And if there's lack of communication there and transparency on, what your role is, what we think of you, and here's how we need to get to the point where, we expect you to be, that angst that can be created there for that player, the incentive now is to go find a program that you're going to feel better about, feel more comfortable, gain that playing time.
Well, let's go back a couple years, probably almost to the day. We sat down with Tom Walter and kind of, I mean, it was at the beginning of the transfer portal era, and money probably wasn't what it is, and this year's transfer portal and all of those factors in play. But we asked that question straight up, was like, how do you balance that? Because they are a program that probably does a better job of holding on to guys that don't play, right? Like guys that they're high on that maybe don't play, and they give them the developmental structure. And exactly what you said is the exact process. We're honest with them. We have an open line of communication to the parents, to the agents, to everybody involved. We bring everybody to the table. We explain the why you're not playing, what we see you being in the future, how we're going to get you there, the resources we're going to put behind you. We build that relationship and get them to understand, right? And there's so many, I find it fascinating because I came across a relationship here in the Carolina area where a football player had played at a really big name program with a really big name coach who had spent years and years in the NFL and had won multiple Super Bowls.
Go ahead, keep
And
giving clues.
it's not that obvious. And not to give away anything, because there were a lot of stories that would be a lot of fun and probably make us very, very viral and very, very intriguing. But this one kind of pertains to what we're talking about here. That coach, who spent a ton of time in the NFL, which is Bill Belichick, wanted nothing to do with the parents, because in the NFL, you don't need the parents to be involved at all. Like, what would a parent be doing with 35? And he wanted nothing to do with the parents, nothing to do with the parent committee, nothing to do with any of those factors that come into play. Well, the reality is, as somebody who's been around college athletics, like the both of you and I have, and all these coaches that have experience in college athletics, the parents are the most valuable asset to have a line of communication with for a young guy, because when that kid doesn't play on Saturday, he doesn't pick up the phone and call his agent to discuss his problems. Maybe they do in some scenarios. He calls his mom and dad because he's 18 years old in the fall of his freshman year. So if you want these guys to believe in their developmental process, you have to understand how open that line of communication is to everybody, not just the player. You don't just have to have that explanation to the player. You have to have that explanation in a relationship with the parents, and you have to have that explanation in relationship with the agent. And even if that's against what you got into coaching for, I think Coach Walter explained this the best, of just being like, yeah, that wasn't coaching when I started, but I'm open to doing it because I care about these guys and I care about Wake Forest baseball and I care about what we're doing. And I think you see that a lot of times with programs is like, we have to over communicate now. We have to over communicate to everybody. If this kid has an agent, who the heck knows? His agent could be his cousin, his uncle, his buddy from high school, because there's no regulation of agents, which is a whole nother issue. I still have to be understanding of what that player needs if we see the value in it, right? And if we think he's worth the juice is worth the squeeze on said player. And it's just like you mentioned, we have to communicate the plan to get those guys to understand. And even them, with the instant gratification that our baseball society is right now, even then that might not be enough to convince them to hang around and to believe in your development and your long-term vision.